Have you ever stood at the edge of an ancient forest, as twilight bleeds purple and gray into the canopy, and felt a presence older than the trees themselves? Have you ever heard a whisper on the wind that carried not the sound of leaves, but of a name you were never meant to know? These sensations are the echoes of ancestral memory, the psychic residue of fears and warnings that have shaped the human soul since we first huddled around a fire, peering into the all-consuming darkness beyond its flickering light. They are the genesis of legend. I am your guide on this exploration into the shadowed hinterlands of the human imagination. We are here to conduct an archaeology of dread, to excavate the stories that cultures have buried deep within their soil, stories that are not mere fictions, but are, in fact, living testaments to the truths we dare not speak in the light of day. These are not tales spun for the fleeting entertainment of children around a campfire. They are collective nightmares, cautionary missives, and philosophical inquiries given monstrous form. They are the guardians of sacred boundaries and the embodiments of cosmic justice. Our venture tonight will take us across continents and through centuries as we unearth 7 of the world's most profound and terrifying legends. We shall journey from the frozen forests of the north, where insatiable hunger were the human face, to the mist-shrouded rivers of the south, where a mother's grief has become an eternal, spectral curse. We will examine the very architecture of these myths, discerning the psychological and sociological pressures that gave them such horrifying and enduring shape. This is a plunge into the abyss of folklore, where every monster is a mirror and every shadow holds a lesson. If you, like me, feel an inexorable pull towards the mysteries that lie coiled beneath the surface of the mundane world, then I invite you to join our community of scholars and seekers. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notifications so that you do not miss a single one of our expeditions into the dark. And as we proceed, I ask you to consider which of these entities resonates most deeply with your own primal fears. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, for in sharing our anxieties, we may begin to understand them. And now, let our journey into the heart of darkness truly begin. Our first legend comes to us from the bitter, snow-choked wilderness of the North American continent, whispered in the Algonquian languages of the First Peoples. It is a name that tastes of ice and starvation, the Wendigo. This is not a simple beast, a mere predator of flesh and bone. The Wendigo is a concept, a spiritual corruption, a horrifying metamorphosis born of humanity's most profound taboo. It is the embodiment of insatiable hunger, a hunger that extends beyond the physical and into the metaphysical, a craving so absolute that it consumes the very soul of its host, leaving behind only a hollow, ravenous echo. It is the spirit of the lonely places, the malevolent ghost of winter starvation made manifest. The Wendigo is often described as a gaunt, emaciated giant, its desiccated skin stretched taut over a skeletal frame. Its eyes are pushed deep into their sockets, glowing with a cold, malevolent light, like embers at the heart of a dying fire. Its lips are tattered and bloody, drawn back from long, yellowed fangs, and its tongue is long and prehensile. Despite its skeletal appearance, it possesses supernatural strength and speed, moving through the blizzard-whipped forest with a silence that defies its towering size. Some tales speak of it having antlers like a deer or claws of jagged ice, but all agree on its most terrifying feature, an aura of profound, soul-crushing cold that precedes it, freezing the very marrow in one's bones. Its cry is the shriek of the winter wind, a sound that promises only desolation and an agonizing, empty end. Its powers are as chilling as its form. It is a master of mimicry, capable of perfectly replicating the voice of a loved one, a cry for help designed to lure unsuspecting victims out into the unforgiving wilderness. It is unnaturally fast, able to outrun any human, and its strength is sufficient to tear a person limb from limb. But its most insidious ability is psychological. To be in the presence of a Wendigo is to feel an encroaching madness, a paranoia that turns friend against friend, and most terrifyingly, the burgeoning spark of its own insatiable hunger within your own heart. Its curse is contagious, a spiritual sickness that can infect those who succumb to desperation and greed. The only weakness attributed to it is fire. Its icy heart cannot withstand the cleansing flame. The genesis of a Wendigo is a tragic and profane affair. It is not born, but made. A human being, lost in the unforgiving northern winter and facing the slow agony of starvation, who resorts to the ultimate act of desperation, cannibalism, becomes vulnerable to the Wendigo spirit. In consuming the flesh of another human, they invite this ancient evil into their soul. The first taste is a dam-breaking, unleashing a flood of insatiable craving that can never be satisfied. The transformation is agonizing, the body elongating, the bones shifting, the humanity withering away until only the monster remains. Alternatively, a person who is exceptionally greedy or who hoards resources while the community starves can also attract the spirit, their avarice a form of spiritual cannibalism that makes them a fitting vessel for the entity. Consider the winter of 1878 in the unforgiving boreal forests of what would one day be called Alberta. A Cree trapper named Swift Runner, known for his skill and his deep knowledge of the land, had taken his family, his wife, his mother-in-law, and their 6 children to their winter trapping grounds. He was a respected man, but a quiet darkness had begun to fester within him, a possessiveness that bordered on greed. When spring thawed the trails and the other trappers returned to the Hudson's Bay Company post at Fort Saskatchewan, Swift Runner returned alone. He was gaunt, his eyes holding a haunted, unnatural gleam. He claimed his entire family had starved to death during the unusually harsh winter. The story was plausible, for such tragedies were not uncommon. But inconsistencies began to surface. Swift Runner did not appear as starved as a man who had watched his entire family perish should have been. His grief seemed hollow, performative. Suspicions led the Northwest Mounted Police to his winter camp. There, amidst the silent, snow-dusted pines, they discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. The camp was not empty of food. There was evidence of stored provisions, but scattered about were human bones, cracked open for their marrow, and the clear, unmistakable signs of butchery. Under interrogation, Swift Runner's fragile sanity shattered. He confessed that he had not starved. He had been possessed, he claimed, by the spirit of the Wendigo. One by one, he had murdered and consumed his own family, driven by a hunger that no amount of flesh could quell. He was tried and hanged, the first legal execution in the territory, but the Cree elders knew this was not a simple case of murder. It was a manifestation of an ancient evil, a cautionary tale given brutal, bloody life. The Wendigo is far more than a simple campfire monster. It is a profound and complex cultural metaphor. On its most fundamental level, it serves as a stark enforcement of the ultimate social taboo, the prohibition against cannibalism. In a society living on the brink of survival, where a harsh winter could mean starvation for everyone, the act of consuming another human being was the ultimate betrayal of the communal bond. The Wendigo legend transforms this act from a crime into a spiritual damnation, a loss of humanity so complete that one becomes a literal monster. It is a powerful deterrent, encoding a crucial survival law into the very fabric of folklore. But the analysis goes deeper. The Wendigo is a potent symbol of insatiable greed and selfishness. The version of the legend where the spirit possesses a hoarder, one who takes more than their share while others suffer, speaks directly to the Algonquian cultural values of cooperation, community, and balance. To act with excessive individualism is to engage in a form of social cannibalism, consuming the resources that should sustain the whole. In this light, the Wendigo becomes a critique of unchecked avarice, a warning that a hunger for more wealth, more power, more resources, is a path to monstrosity. This interpretation has gained startling relevance in the modern era, where the Wendigo is frequently invoked as a metaphor for the destructive, all-consuming nature of colonialism, industrial capitalism, and the environmental devastation wrought by a culture of endless consumption. The monster that once haunted the frozen forests now haunts our conscience, a terrifying reflection of civilization that is devouring the planet that sustains it. The cold it radiates is the cold of alienation. Its hunger is the empty void of materialism. The Wendigo reminds us that some appetites, once indulged, can never be sated, and that the greatest monster is often born from the simple, selfish desire for more. We travel now from the frozen forests to the misty, waterlogged landscapes of Scandinavia, to the dark, silent pools and rushing rivers where a different kind of entity holds sway. Here, beneath the placid surface of the water, dwells the Naken, or the Neck. This creature is an elemental spirit of the freshwater, a shape-shifting entity whose alluring music is a siren song for the unwary. It is a being of profound ambiguity, at once a source of artistic genius and a harbinger of certain death. The Naken represents the dangerous duality of water itself, a source of life and beauty that possesses an immense, indifferent capacity for destruction. It is the beautiful, terrible soul of the inland waters. The Naken is a master of disguise, its true form rarely seen and subject to great variation in local folklore. It might appear as a handsome young man, often with long, wet hair, sitting on the riverbank playing a violin or harp with otherworldly skill. It can also manifest as a beautiful white horse, placid and inviting, waiting for a rider it can carry to a watery grave. Other tales describe it as a more monstrous being of weed and river muck, a grotesque figure with glowing eyes that peers up from the depths of a mill pond. In some traditions, its true form is revealed only by a single telltale sign. Its ears might be those of a horse, or it may have a single, perpetually dripping nostril. Regardless of its guise, its presence is always tied to the water. The still, black tarns, the churning rapids beneath a waterfall, or the deceptively calm waters by a bridge at twilight. The creature's primary power is its music. The Naken is a virtuoso musician, and the melodies it plays are supernaturally enchanting, capable of captivating anyone who hears them. This music can inspire ecstasy, madness, or an irresistible compulsion to walk into the water and drown. It is said that great human violinists could learn their art by making a pact with the Naken, offering it a sacrifice, often a black cat or a few drops of blood, in exchange for being taught its divine melodies. Beyond its music, the Naken possesses the ability to control its aquatic domain and is a formidable shapeshifter. Its primary weakness, however, is its name. If a person can guess or learn the Naken's true name and call it aloud, its power over them is broken, and it will be forced to retreat into the depths. Another protection is steel, particularly a knife or cross thrown into the water, which can break its spell. The origins of the Naken are ancient, rooted in pre-Christian animistic beliefs where every element of nature possessed a spirit. It is a remnant of a time when humanity viewed the natural world with a mixture of reverence and terror. It is not born in the human sense, but is an eternal part of the landscape, an embodiment of the water's soul. It is a guardian of its domain, and its malevolence is often directed at those who are disrespectful, arrogant, or who approach the water without the proper caution. It is said to be particularly active on Midsummer's Eve and Christmas Eve, times when the veil between the worlds is thin. The Naken is the personification of the river's silent, patient threat. Let us journey back to 19th century Norway, to a small village nestled in a valley carved by the relentless flow of the Grimselva River. A young man named Lars was renowned throughout the valley for his talent with the fiddle. He could make the instrument sing with a joy that set feet dancing at weddings, and weep with a sorrow that brought solace at funerals. Yet Lars was consumed by ambition. He was not content to be the best fiddler in the valley. He yearned for a skill that was more than human. The old folk whispered of the Naken that lived in the deep, black pool beneath the Storfossen waterfall, a spirit who could teach a man to play so that the very stones would weep. They warned him that such a gift came at a terrible price. Ignoring their counsel, Lars went to the waterfall on a moonless midsummer's eve, a live black kitten clutched in a sack as his offering. As the roar of the falls filled the air, he called out, offering his gift in exchange for mastery of the fiddle. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the water. Then, a melody began to weave itself through the din, a tune of such haunting beauty that Lars felt his heart would break. From the churning water emerged a figure, impossibly pale and handsome, holding a violin that seemed carved from driftwood and strung with moonlight. The Nakin accepted the offering, and the bargain was struck. The spirit taught Lars its songs, melodies that spoke of the river's ancient sorrow and the cold, silent world beneath the surface. Lars returned to the village, a changed man. His music was no longer merely skillful. It was supernatural. When he played, people were utterly entranced, unable to move, lost in visions of whirlpools and sunken treasures. But his new art came with a curse. He could no longer play the joyous tunes of the village. Every melody that came from his fiddle was infused with a profound, soul-drenching melancholy. The people grew to fear his music. One evening, during a festival, he began to play a new tune, a wild, ecstatic reel he had learned from the Nakin. The villagers began to dance, first with joy, then with a frantic, desperate energy they could not control. The music pulled them, drew them, as if by an invisible current, towards the river. It was only when the village priest threw his iron cross at Lars's feet, breaking the fiddle and the spell, that the villagers awoke from their trance, standing shivering at the very edge of the rushing water. Lars, his gift now a source of terror, was exiled from the village, left to wander the wilderness with the Nakin's chilling music forever echoing in his soul. The legend of the Nakin is a sophisticated exploration of the relationship between humanity, nature, and art. At its core is a cautionary tale about the dangers inherent in the natural world. For communities living by rivers and lakes, drowning was a constant and very real threat. The Nakin gives this threat a face and a voice, personifying the seductive, treacherous beauty of the water. The beautiful horse or the handsome musician is the calm, inviting surface of the lake, which conceals the deadly cold and crushing pressure of the depths. The legend teaches respect and caution, reminding people that nature is not a benign playground, but a powerful, indifferent force. Furthermore, the Nakin serves as a powerful metaphor for the perilous nature of artistic genius and ambition. Lars' story is a classic Faustian bargain. He desires a talent that transcends human limitation and seeks it from a primal, non-human source. The music he gains is indeed divine, but it is also inhuman. It is divorced from the warmth and community of human experience, infused with the cold, sorrowful spirit of the water. This symbolizes the potential for great art to be isolating, to alienate the artist from the very society they wish to captivate. It suggests that true genius often borders on madness, and that tapping into the deepest, most primal sources of creativity can be a dangerous act that costs the artist their connection to humanity. The Nakin is the muse of the abyss, and its gifts are both sublime and utterly destructive. It warns that some depths are best left unexplored, and some melodies are too beautiful to be safely heard by mortal ears. We now turn our gaze eastward to the vast, arid landscapes of the Middle East and North Africa, to a world of scorching sands and ancient, star-filled nights. Here, we encounter a being not of flesh or spirit as we understand them, but of a third creation, the jinn. Born of a smokeless fire, the jinn are a race of powerful, intelligent, and morally ambiguous entities that inhabit a world parallel to our own. They are not the benevolent, wish-granting genies of Western caricature. They are complex beings with their own societies, laws, and free will, capable of great good, profound evil, and everything in between. The jinn represent the unseen forces of the world, the chaotic and unpredictable energies that exist just beyond the veil of human perception. Describing the physical form of a jinn is nearly impossible, for they are consummate shapeshifters. In their natural state, They are said to be composed of a subtle, fiery vapor, allowing them to remain invisible to human eyes. When they choose to manifest, they can assume any form they desire: a human, an animal, often a black dog or a snake, or a terrifying hybrid creature of monstrous proportions. They can be beautiful or grotesque, seductive or horrifying. Their true power, however, lies not in their physical form, but in their ability to manipulate the physical world and influence human minds. They are beings of immense power, capable of teleportation, telekinesis, and creating elaborate illusions. They can possess humans, causing madness and illness, or they can offer knowledge and aid. The jinn are a diverse race, divided into various tribes and types, such as the malevolent Ifrit, known for their immense strength and wickedness, or the cunning Merid, often associated with water and considered the most powerful. Like humans, they are subject to divine judgment, and their society mirrors our own in its complexity. There are righteous, believing jinn, and there are those who are wicked and unbelieving. They can fall in love, marry, have children, and die, though their lifespans are vastly longer than ours. Their primary weakness is their vulnerability to certain divine words or prayers, which can repel or even harm them. They are also said to be repelled by salt and iron, common folkloric wards against supernatural entities across many cultures. According to Islamic theology, the jinn were created by God from a smokeless fire before the creation of Adam from clay. They inhabited the earth long before humanity, and when humans were created and given stewardship of the planet, a powerful jinn named Iblis refused to bow to Adam out of pride, believing his fiery nature to be superior to man's earthly one. For this act of rebellion, Iblis was cast out and became Shaitan, or Satan, the great tempter. This origin story establishes the jinn's place in the cosmic order. They are a parallel creation to humanity, sharing the capacity for faith and rebellion, for good and for evil. Their existence is a constant reminder that the world is more complex than what our senses can perceive. Let us travel to the early 20th century, to the labyrinthine souks of Marrakesh. A young, ambitious merchant named Khalid had grown frustrated with his modest success. He saw the opulent riads of the wealthy traders and burned with a covetous envy. He began to dabble in forbidden arts, seeking out an old sorcerer who was rumored to have dealings with the jinn. The sorcerer warned Khalid that trafficking with the fireborn was a dangerous game, for their bargains were always twisted, their gifts laden with unseen barbs. But Khalid, blinded by greed, would not be deterred. He learned the rituals and the incantations, and one night, in the secluded courtyard of his home, he performed a summoning. He had intended to summon a minor, subservient jinn, but his ambition outstripped his skill. A whirlwind of black sand and scorching air erupted in the courtyard, coalescing into the form of a towering Ifrit, its eyes burning like coals and its voice the grinding of stone. The Ifrit was bound by the ancient laws of summoning, but was filled with a malevolent contempt for the arrogant human who had dared to call it. Khalid, terrified but resolute, demanded wealth. He wanted his shop to be the most prosperous in all of Marrakesh. The Ifrit smiled a lipless, cruel smile and agreed. "Your shop shall overflow with customers," it hissed, "and every coin in the city will seek your hand." The next day, Khalid's fortunes turned dramatically. His shop was mobbed with customers, fighting to buy his wares at any price. Gold and silver coins poured into his coffers until they overflowed. He was euphoric, believing he had outsmarted the jinn. But he soon discovered the terrible nature of his bargain. While his shop was full, the rest of his souk was empty. The other merchants, his friends and neighbors, were ruined, their livelihoods destroyed by the supernatural pull of Khalid's business. He had not simply become wealthy. He had become a vortex of wealth, draining the life from the community around him. Furthermore, the coins he earned felt cold to the touch, and the food he bought with them tasted of ash. He was surrounded by riches, yet he felt a gnawing, spiritual emptiness. He was haunted by the faces of the men he had impoverished and tormented by the Ifrit's mocking laughter, which he alone could hear on the wind. He died a wealthy man, but he died utterly alone, his soul as barren as the desert sand, a prisoner in a palace of his own greed. The jinn are a powerful theological and psychological construct, serving multiple functions within the cultures that believe in them. Theologically, they provide an explanation for the unexplainable. In a world before modern science and psychiatry, the jinn could account for everything from sudden illness and mental instability, possession, to strokes of good or bad luck, a jinn's aid or mischief. They populate the world with unseen agency, offering a narrative framework for the chaotic and often arbitrary nature of human existence. This belief system provides a sense of order, albeit a frightening one, to a world that might otherwise seem random and meaningless. Psychologically, the jinn represent the hidden aspects of the human psyche. They are the embodiment of our own smokeless fire, our passions, our ambitions, our hidden desires, and our capacity for both incredible creativity and devastating cruelty. Khaled's story is not just about a supernatural monster. It is a parable about the destructive nature of unchecked ambition. The Ifrit he summons is merely an externalization of the greedy, ego-driven fire within his own soul. The legend warns that when we allow these primal forces to dominate our actions, we may achieve our worldly goals, but we risk incinerating our own humanity and our connection to the community in the process. The jinn remind us that we are not alone in the universe, and more importantly, that we are not always in control of the powerful, invisible forces that stir within our own hearts. From the deserts, we sail across the sea to the archipelago of the Philippines, a land of lush jungles, volcanic mountains, and a rich, syncretic folklore that blends indigenous animism with centuries of colonial influence. It is here we encounter one of the most viscerally terrifying creatures in the pantheon of global monsters, the Manananggal. This being is a nocturnal horror, a vampiric entity that preys on the innocent from the shadows. But its true terror lies in its grotesque and unnatural method of transformation. The Manananggal is a symbol of profound duality, of the horrifying schism between the mundane and the monstrous, and it embodies deep-seated anxieties about femininity, community, and hidden betrayal. By day, the Manananggal appears as an ordinary, often beautiful and reclusive, human woman. She lives within the community, a neighbor, a friend, a seemingly harmless member of the village. But as night falls, a hideous transformation occurs. In the seclusion of her home, she rubs a special oil on her body, causing leathery, bat-like wings to sprout from her back. Then comes the most gruesome part of her metamorphosis. Her upper torso detaches from her lower body, leaving her legs and waist standing lifelessly on the ground. The top half, now a horrifying creature of head, torso, arms, and wings, takes to the night sky with its entrails dangling beneath it, searching for prey. Its name is derived from the Tagalog word tanggal, meaning to remove or to separate, a direct reference to its self-severing nature. The Manananggal is a hunter of the night, possessing sharp claws and fangs. Its primary targets are sleeping pregnant women. It lands silently on the roof of a house and lowers an impossibly long, proboscis-like tongue through a gap in the thatch, using it to suck the heart from the developing fetus or drink the blood of the mother. It is also known to prey on newlyweds and young couples, its presence a dark omen upon unions and fertility. Its weaknesses are as specific as its habits. The creature is vulnerable to sunlight, which will kill it if it is caught outside its lair at dawn. Its greatest vulnerability, however, is its abandoned lower half. If a person finds the stationary legs and torso, they can destroy the creature by sprinkling salt, crushed garlic, or ash upon the exposed flesh of the waist, which will prevent the upper half from reattaching. Unable to become whole again, the winged monster is doomed to be destroyed by the rising sun. The origin of the Manananggal is steeped in the mystical traditions of the Philippines, often linked to black magic or a curse. A woman might become a Manananggal by choice, through a pact with dark forces, or she might inherit the curse from an elder. In some tales, the transformation is involuntary, caused by a magical contamination, such as swallowing a black chick with a stone in its gullet, which then lives inside her and grants her the horrifying power. This origin highlights the theme of internal corruption, the idea that a monstrous nature can be secretly living and growing inside a seemingly normal person. Imagine a small, remote village in the Visayan Islands in the late 19th century. The community was tightly knit, but a palpable fear had taken hold. In the past month, 2 young women, both pregnant with their first child, had mysteriously sickened and lost their babies. The local Hylet, the folk healer, found no natural cause for the tragedies. Whispers of a Manananggal began to circulate, and suspicion, like a poison, seeped into the heart of the village. Every night, the men would form watch parties, carrying bolos and pouches of salt, their eyes scanning the dark silhouette of the jungle against the moonlit sky. Suspicion soon fell upon Elena, a quiet, beautiful woman who had moved to the village a year prior after the death of her husband. She kept to herself, her beauty making her an object of both admiration and envy. One of the village elders claimed to have seen a great, winged shadow pass over his hut on the night of the second tragedy, flying from the direction of Elena's small nipa, a hut at the edge of the village. The fear was now given a name and a face. One night, a brave young man named Mateo, whose own wife was with child, decided to investigate. He crept through the jungle to Elena's hut. Peering through a crack in the bamboo wall, he witnessed the unthinkable. Elena was anointing herself with a foul-smelling oil, her body contorting as leathery wings tore from her shoulder blades. With a sickening, wet sound, her torso ripped away from her legs and flew out through the open window, a trail of viscera hanging in the air. Fighting his terror, Mateo entered the hut. There stood the creature's lower half, pale and still in the moonlight. Remembering the old tales, he took his pouch of salt and garlic and spread it liberally over the severed waist. He then hid and waited. Just before dawn, the winged horror returned. It descended towards the window, but as it tried to rejoin its lower body, it recoiled with a shriek of agony. The salt and garlic had sealed the connection. The creature thrashed and clawed at the hut, its human face contorted in a mask of rage and terror as the first rays of the sun crested the mountains. Its flesh began to smoke and blacken, and with a final, piercing scream, the Manananggal disintegrated into ash. The village was saved, but the fear of the enemy within would linger for generations. The Manananggal is a profoundly complex sociological and psychological symbol. On a social level, it represents the ultimate betrayal of community trust. In a small, interdependent village, the greatest threat is not the external enemy, but the enemy who lives among you, who shares your food and your festivals, but who secretly preys upon the community's future, its unborn children. The monster's ability to appear as a normal woman during the day speaks to the deep-seated anxiety of the hidden monster, the traitor disguised as a neighbor. This fear reinforces social cohesion by encouraging vigilance and suspicion of outsiders or those who deviate from communal norms. Psychologically, the legend delves into anxieties surrounding female power, sexuality, and the body. The Manananggal is a monstrous feminine archetype, a horrific perversion of motherhood and nurturing. Instead of creating life, she consumes it at its most vulnerable stage. Her self-severing is a visceral, horrifying metaphor for a fractured identity, a schism between the public, socially acceptable self, the lower body, rooted to the earth, and the monstrous, liberated, and destructive hidden self, the flying upper body. This can be interpreted as a manifestation of patriarchal anxieties about female autonomy and sexuality. The beautiful, independent woman, like Elena, the widow, who operates outside of direct male control, becomes a literal monster who threatens the patriarchal line by destroying fetuses. The Manananggal is a chilling exploration of duality, a testament to the fear that the person we trust the most could be harboring a secret, ravenous, and utterly alien nature. It is the monster next door. We now cross another ocean, to the sun-scorched plains and shadowed riverbanks of Latin America, where a tragic and terrifying figure wanders the night. She is known throughout the Spanish-speaking world, her mournful cry a sound that freezes the blood of all who hear it. This is La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. She is not a monster of pure malevolence, but a spectral embodiment of grief, guilt, and eternal penance. Her legend is one of the most pervasive and emotionally resonant in the Americas, a story of love, betrayal, and a mother's crime so terrible that it has condemned her to an eternity of sorrowful searching. She represents the haunting power of maternal grief and the indelible scars of colonial history. La Llorona is most often described as a tall, slender spirit, clad in a flowing white gown that seems to drift rather than touch the ground. Her face is usually hidden by a veil or by her long, black hair, but those who claim to have seen it describe a countenance of horrifying, unending anguish, or sometimes the blank, skeletal features of a horse. Her most definitive characteristic, however, is auditory, her terrifying, soul-shattering wail. It is a cry of "I mis hijos," "Oh, my children," a sound that carries on the wind and is said to be a portent of misfortune or death for those who hear it. She is inextricably linked to bodies of water, rivers, lakes, and canals, the sites of her original sin. The powers of La Llorona are primarily psychological and premonitory. Her cry induces a profound, paralyzing fear. To hear it up close is said to drive a person to madness. She is a spirit of ill omen, and her appearance often precedes a drowning or the death of a child in the community. While not typically a physically aggressive spirit in most versions of the tale, she is a grave danger to children. It is said that she will sometimes mistake a living child for one of her own lost children and, in her spectral confusion and desperation, will drag them into the water to drown, hoping to appease the spirits who have judged her. Her only weakness seems to be her own eternal torment. She is trapped in a compulsive loop of searching and weeping, unable to find peace or move on. The most common origin story for La Llorona begins with a beautiful indigenous woman named Maria. She fell deeply in love with a wealthy and handsome Spanish nobleman. They had 2 children together, and, for a time, she was happy. However, the nobleman refused to marry her because of her lower social status. His visits became less frequent, and eventually, he abandoned her altogether, marrying a Spanish woman of his own class. Consumed by an agony of grief and rage, Maria was driven to a moment of temporary madness. She took her 2 beloved children to the river and drowned them, partly to spite their father and partly because she could not bear the shame of her abandonment. As the current swept their small bodies away, her sanity returned, and she was struck by the full, horrifying weight of her actions. She ran along the riverbank, screaming for her children, but it was too late. She died of grief on that same riverbank, and her spirit was denied entry into the afterlife until she could find the souls of her lost children. Let us place ourselves in a small village in rural Mexico in the mid-20th century. 2 young brothers, Miguel and Joaquin, were known for their mischievousness. Against the strict warnings of their grandmother, they often snuck out at night to fish in the river that bordered their family's land. Their grandmother had told them the story of La Llorona 100 times, her voice low and serious. "Never go near the river after dark," she would say. "If you hear a woman crying, you run home and you do not look back." The boys, full of youthful bravado, dismissed it as an old woman's scary story. One humid summer evening, the moon obscured by thick clouds, the brothers crept out to their favorite fishing spot. The river was unnaturally quiet, the usual chorus of frogs and insects strangely silent. As they cast their lines, a faint sound drifted towards them from downriver. It sounded like a woman weeping softly. Joaquin, the younger brother, felt a prickle of fear, but Miguel scoffed, telling him it was just the wind. The sound grew louder, closer, evolving from a soft sob into a full-throated, agonizing wail that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. It was a cry of pure, undiluted despair that carried the words, "I mis hijos," a thick, Chilling mist rolled off the water, and through it they saw a figure in white gliding along the opposite bank. She moved without walking, a spectral form of sorrow. The boys were frozen in terror. The figure turned its head towards them, and though they could not see a face, they felt a gaze of immense, ancient pain. It raised a long, pale arm and pointed a finger directly at them. That was what broke the spell. They dropped their fishing poles and ran, sprinting through the fields without daring to look back, the horrifying wail chasing them all the way to the safety of their home. They never went near the river at night again, the memory of that cry forever silencing their youthful arrogance. The legend of La Llorona is a rich text for historical and psychological analysis. Historically, it is often interpreted as an allegory for the trauma of the Spanish conquest of the Americas. Maria, the indigenous woman, represents the native peoples. The Spanish nobleman represents the European colonizers. Their children are the mestizo offspring of this violent and unequal union. The nobleman's abandonment of Maria for a Spanish bride reflects the conqueror's ultimate rejection of the indigenous cultures they had exploited. Maria's desperate act of filicide, in this reading, becomes a complex and tragic metaphor for the destruction of indigenous identity and culture in the wake of conquest, a desperate, self-destructive act in the face of unbearable betrayal and loss. La Llorona's eternal wandering and weeping is the lingering, unresolved historical trauma that haunts the continent. Psychologically, the story is a powerful exploration of female rage, maternal guilt, and the social constraints placed upon women. La Llorona is a figure who transgresses the ultimate boundary of motherhood. Her story serves as a cautionary tale, a stark warning against feminine passion untethered from social control. However, she is also a deeply sympathetic figure. She is not a monster born of pure evil, but a human woman driven to an unspeakable act by profound pain and societal injustice. Her eternal punishment elicits both terror and pity. She embodies the terror of a mother's love turning into a destructive force, and she serves as a vessel for collective anxieties about sin, penance, and the possibility of an unforgivable act. Her cry is not just a ghost wail. It is the echo of a history of pain and a timeless expression of the deepest sorrow a human heart can know. This concludes our journey for today. We have traversed the globe, from the icy layers of the Wendigo to the weeping rivers of La Llorona, from the musical depths of the Nakan to the fiery, invisible world of the Jinn, and into the night skies with the severed form of the Manananggal. We have seen how these entities are not mere fictions, but are, in fact, profound cultural artifacts. They are the monstrous embodiments of our deepest anxieties, the fear of starvation and greed, the perilous beauty of nature and art, the terror of the unseen and the traitor within, and the haunting weight of historical trauma and personal guilt. What wisdom, then, have we gleaned from this dark descent? We have learned that every culture crafts the monsters it needs. These legends serve as moral compasses, as psychological release valves, and as sociological glue. The Wendigo enforces a communal taboo essential for survival. The Nakan teaches a necessary respect for a dangerous natural world. The Jinn gives a name to the chaotic and unseen forces both outside and inside of us. The Manananggal warns of the fragility of community trust. And La Llorona gives a voice to a grief so profound it cannot be contained by a single lifetime. They are mirrors, reflecting the unique pressures, values, and histories of the peoples who tell their tales. In this, we find a unified meaning. These stories, in all their terrifying diversity, reveal a fundamental human impulse to give shape to the formless, to give a name to the unnameable, and to find meaning in suffering. They are a testament to our species' resilience, our ability to take the very things that terrify us, death, betrayal, madness, grief, and transform them into art, into wisdom, into stories that are passed down through the generations like sacred heirlooms. The best monsters are always the ones that show us something true about ourselves. If you have found value in our exploration of these ancestral fears, then I ask you to support our work. In subscribing to this channel, you do more than simply watch videos. You become a keeper of these stories, a guardian of the wisdom encoded within our collective nightmares. Share these legends with others who you think would appreciate their depth, and continue the conversation in the comments below. What other entities haunt the folklore of your own regions? What do you believe they represent? The world is full of such shadows, and our journey is far from over. The old stories are not dead. They are merely sleeping, waiting for new voices to tell them and new ears to hear their warnings. I shall continue to be your faithful guide in these explorations. Until we meet again, may your nights be free from the cry of the weeping woman and the hunger of the winter spirit. May you walk with caution by the water's edge and be wary of bargains made in fire and shadow. Travel safely through the darkness.